Hello everyone and welcome back to 2PJZ after what has been quite a long hiatus, almost about a year since I've released the pros and cons video of my Mark IV R32. If you've been keeping up with the channel, you might have seen a few of the other videos I've been posting, such as some of the detailing and mechanical work by Haynes Mechanical and Detail that I've done little promo shoots for them. And that's where we are today. We're here at Callum's new shop in Adelaide. I brought along my Subaru, even though he doesn't do Subarus normally. He's doing a little special favour for me because some of it is a little bit broken. So we're going to change out the power steering bushes and boots. We're also going to have a look at what the oil and fuel leak is and change out the brake rotors and pads. So this will be a little bit of a touch and go how-to, but more so just so you guys can get back on the channel and see what we're up to. So enjoy. Begin by jacking up the car or placing it on the hoist, depending on what setup you're using. Double check that the car is safe before lifting it, and then crack your nuts. Next up, jack the car up or press the up button on the hoist. If you have an air ratchet, simply take off the nuts when it's off the floor, but if you're using a breaker bar, make sure you crack your nuts on the floor like we said before. Always keep one bolt in the wheel when it's off the floor, just to make sure that you have a good grip on it before you take it off. Alright, so we've now got the car up on the hoist, and I'll show you underneath to see what we're playing with here. That's one of our power steering bushes. You can tell it's sort of quite oily, also a bit worn out. We've also got a bit of an oil spill here. We've got other power steering bush is also quite oily and worn out. Power steering boot here, this one is completely severed, so it should be all the way over, but yeah, that's just come apart, so we've got new ones of them. Other side isn't too bad, that side's still hanging on, but we've got another one of them just to replace it, because you may as well do both when you're down here. Other than that, we just got, see on the sump here, there's a bit of an oil leak just around this area. We've also got a fuel leak, but not sure where that exactly is coming from yet. Looking under the rest of the car, it's quite tidy, apart from the old sort of normal signs of rust that you get from an older car. It's looking quite good. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. Not bad for 1,400 bucks, but yeah, definitely today we need to get this stuff sorted. You also can tell that the brakes are, you can actually feel, if you rub your hand along it, you can feel the divots because there's pretty much no brake pad left whatsoever. I'm going to swap those out, put the new ones in, so let's get to work. If you're a novice like me, make sure you ask someone who knows what they're doing, what the best process is. Now that we've seen what's actually wrong with the car, here's what you're going to need to make it right. Some of you might know that I work at Repco, so basically I've gone nuts on all the Repco home brand parts because they're actually really good quality. So if you're after some cheaper parts for your car that are actually made by the top brands and then just contracted out, buy this stuff. It's really, really good. I've got some brake pads. I've got 2 brake rotors, as you can see. I've got some Northane power steering rack bushes, and then just 2 of the steering rack boots. To take the brake rotors off, start by undoing the 2 bolts that lock in the calipers. You can then take off a locking mechanism after you've pinned the caliper up. The rotors should just slide off, or they may need to be hammered. We've got to the point now where we've hung the caliper up. We have taken off the brake rotor, we've taken off the little locking at the back, and now we're ready to clean up the hubs a little bit because they are extremely rusty, as you can obviously tell. We'll put the new rotors on, slide the new pads in, lock it all back up, and then go around and do the other side. This is a good time to level out the face of the hub before you put your new rotors on. Once you've done that, check your new rotors and make sure they're in shape and good to go. So comparing the two now, you can tell here this one is completely shafted, it's completely stuffed. Make sure they're the same size. That's really good, that's perfect. Use a specific brake cleaner or degreaser product to clean the faces of the rotors before you apply them to the car. Give them a good wipe down and make sure they're really as clean as possible before applying them to your vehicle. Next up, inspect your old brake pads against the new ones to make sure that they're the exact same size. In this case, you can see just how worn the old ones are. Attach the brake caliper back to the car before sliding the brake pads in. Use a grease or a similar product like this Plasti-Lube for your caliper pins. You'll also need a disc pad spreader tool to push the pistons back before you put your new pads in. Slide the new pads into the caliper and make sure they're a good fit before screwing everything back down. Go and do the other side of the car. If it's your first time at doing this like it was for me, you'll find it'll take you almost half the time to do the other side. I snapped the bolt. Last step of the brakes, putting the calipers back on. This little boy, which goes into the caliper pin. But basically I was screwing it in and got to do the last little bit of tightening just to make sure it was extra safe. And when pop, and this little bit here got stuck inside of the pin, which is not ideal. So fortunately, after you can see on the table here, we managed to get it off. So we're back on. I just have to run down to Repco to grab a new bolt, and then we'll be able to put the caliper back on. All right, so now that the brakes are all done on both sides, we're going to take off the power steering rack. So to do that, first we have to pop out that plate. So the bolts on this little plate here are 12 mil. You need a 12 mil socket for them. This is a really good time for me to undo the plate and clean up all the oil. We've got to the point now where we have taken off that little plate that was underneath the car. We've taken off the bolts, and then these two were holding the bushes in on the steering rack. And for the next step, next couple of steps, it's maybe a bit grainy, so I do apologize if it is, but under here you can, or maybe cannot, probably see how dirty this is. And that is just all oil over probably thousands of kilometers that hasn't been fixed. A lot of it is really crusty, so we're going to clean that all up, and then we'll drop the bushes out and put the new ones back on, and then sort out the boots. The power steering rack bushes took only about 5 minutes to do. All I had to do was undo the bracket that was holding them in, slide them out, and slide the new ones in. Installing new bushes in the power steering rack ensures that your car feels more sturdy on the road and that you feel a lot safer when you're driving. Once you've cleaned up all the gunk down there, like in my case, do everything back up and make sure it's all tight and ready to go. Then get someone who knows what they're doing to undo the tie rods, and make sure you count how many times you turn it before it comes off. From here it's easy. You simply slide off the power steering rack boot, slide the new one on, undo up the zip tie, and attach the tie rod using the exact same number of revolutions you used to take it off. Once you've completed that, put the wheels back on in the exact reverse order of the way you took them off. Again, if you're doing it on the floor, do up the nuts you can in the air, and then tighten them again on the floor and torque them to spec. Alright, so now that we've got the car on the ground, what we're going to do is just press the brake pedal a few times just to push the pistons out and get them in contact with our new brake pads. Cool, and that should do it. And now we're pretty much done, so we can take it for a bit of a road test and see how we go, and then come back and we'll be all finished. Find a quiet area to do some accelerating and hard braking to bed in the pads. Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of today's video. I want to start by saying a massive thank you to you guys for watching if you stuck it out this long. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something from it. And even if you don't have a Liberty, I just hope you enjoyed watching and being a part of the journey of what was today. Well, I mean, we changed the rotors, the pads. We also changed the power steering rack bushes and the driver's side power steering boot. So that's all nice and new now, really safe. Car needs to go off for a bit of a wheel alignment. Definitely wasn't as bad as it was before because the steering was like that. It's now a little bit wonky, but that's sort of what you expect. Massive thank you to Callum at Haynes Mechanical and Detail. He's a really good mate of mine, and I really appreciate the time he's allowed me to have here using the hoist. It has really made it a lot easier than having to do it at home. So thank you very much for that, Callum. If you guys live in Adelaide, you have any European vehicles, Callum is a specialist for tuning, servicing. He's even doing detailing now, so I'm really keen for that. He's actually going to be correcting my R32 if you've seen that on the channel in the not too distant future. We also have Craig from Royal Wraps who works here, and you might have seen some other work that I've done for Craig on my channel if you go back and have a bit of a look at the BMW M3 and recently the Audi RS3, which is actually Callum's RS3, doing the PPF on the front. Thank you very much for watching, guys. My name's Pat, this is 2PJZ, and I'll see you next time. Oh, still recording.